The cake hit the counter with a hard clatter as the cashier yanked it back from the glass display. And 8-year-old Ethan's hand froze mid-reach against the cold case. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but the payment didn't go through." Sarah's fingers were already moving, swiping her phone screen, refreshing her banking app for the third time in under a minute. Nothing. No pending deposit. No overdraft question. Just a red balance glaring back at her like an accusation. "Can you try it again? Please. Just one more time." The cashier ran the card again. The machine beeped, rejected, beeped again. A line of parents behind her shifted, murmured, checked their watches. Sarah felt every eye on her back like heat against skin. "I'm sorry," the cashier said, softer now, almost apologetic. "Without the remaining balance, I have to cancel the order." Sarah's mouth opened, closed. She looked down at Ethan, whose smile had already started to crack at the edges, the way a kid's face does when he's trying so hard not to let the adults see him disappointed. "It's okay, Mom," Ethan said quickly. "We don't really need a birthday cake. We can just do cupcakes or something." He was lying to protect her. And she knew it. And that knowledge hurt worse than the declined card ever could. "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered, mostly to herself. "I have to cancel." The employee wheeled the Spider-Man cake, the one with Ethan's name piped in blue frosting, back through the swinging door into the kitchen, and it disappeared like it had never existed at all. Standing 3 feet away in line, a man named Daniel had watched the entire exchange without meaning to. He wasn't trying to eavesdrop. But in a bakery this small, on a Saturday morning this crowded, there was nowhere else to look. He recognized something in Ethan's face. Not disappointment. He'd seen disappointment plenty of times raising his own daughter, Lily, who was 7 and currently tugging at his sleeve, oblivious, asking if they could get sprinkles on her cake too. No. What Daniel saw on Ethan's face was embarrassment. The specific, aching embarrassment of a kid who understands his family doesn't have enough, and is trying to carry that weight so his mother doesn't have to carry it alone. Daniel knew that weight. He'd carried it himself 3 years ago, after his wife died, and the bills didn't stop coming just because his world had. He remembered a night not long after the funeral, standing in a grocery store parking lot with a cart full of groceries and a card that wouldn't clear, ready to just leave it all behind and drive home empty-handed. A stranger behind him in line had quietly paid the difference, $41, and walked away before Daniel could even get his name. He never forgot that. And watching Sarah and Ethan walk toward the exit, shoulders low, hands empty, something in his chest told him this was the moment to pass it forward. "Lily, stay right here for 1 second, okay?" he said, and before his daughter could answer, he was already moving. "Excuse me, miss?" Sarah turned, startled, still blinking back the sting in her eyes. "Yes. I couldn't help but hear what happened. I'd like to pay for the cake, if that's all right." Sarah's face shifted from confusion to something firmer, almost defensive. No, that's really kind, but we can't accept that. It's too much." "It's really not that big of a deal," Daniel said, though it absolutely was. It was almost every dollar he had left until his next paycheck. "I don't even know you," Sarah said, her voice catching. "I can't just let a stranger pay for." "Then don't think of it as charity," Daniel said gently. "Think of it as one parent helping another. That's all. Someone did it for me once, when I really needed it. I never got the chance to pay them back. Let me pay it forward instead." Sarah looked down at Ethan, who was staring up at Daniel with wide, hopeful eyes he was clearly trying to hide. "Please, Mom," Ethan whispered. Something in Sarah broke and mended at the exact same moment. "Okay," she said, voice trembling. "Okay. Thank you. I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just let him have his birthday." Daniel turned back to the counter and paid the remaining balance. The cashier smiled, clearly moved, sliding the receipt across with visible reluctance to charge him at all. But Daniel wasn't finished. As Sarah and Ethan stepped outside to wait, he leaned toward the cashier again, lowering his voice. "This is going to sound strange," he said, "but do you have any leftover balloons back there? Candles? Anything?" The cashier blinked. "You already paid for the cake, sir. You don't have to." "I know. I want to. Please." Word spread fast through the small staff. One employee pulled a bundle of forgotten balloons from a storage closet. Another found a box of birthday candles nobody had claimed. The bakery manager, overhearing the whole thing, quietly packed a tub of ice cream into a cooler bag. "You're spending everything you have," the cashier said quietly, almost worried for him. "I know," Daniel said. But some things are worth spending everything on. He walked out with nearly empty pockets and an armful of balloons, gas money the only thing left in his wallet. By the time Sarah unlocked the door to her small apartment that evening, guilt had already crept back into her chest. The cake was saved, yes, but there'd be no party, no friends, no decorations. Just the two of them, in a quiet apartment, eating cake alone. Then came the knock. Sarah opened the door to find Daniel standing there, Lily beside him, and behind them, bakery employees carrying balloons, a box of candles, containers of ice cream, and 3 steaming pizza boxes from a shop 2 doors down that had donated them the moment the owner heard what Daniel had done. "What is this?" Sarah asked, hand pressed to her mouth. "A birthday party," Daniel said simply. "Ethan deserves one." Neighbors, drawn by the sudden noise and balloons bobbing in the hallway, began poking their heads out. One brought a speaker for music. Another brought a homemade card. Within 20 minutes, the tiny apartment that had felt so empty an hour earlier was overflowing with laughter, off-key singing, and the warm chaos of people who, hours before, had been complete strangers. If this story is already pulling at your heart, hit that like button right now and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. It helps this story reach more people who need to see that kindness like this still exists. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because there's so much more of this story coming. Ethan blew out his candles surrounded by people who barely knew his name that morning. Sarah stood in the doorway of her own kitchen, wiping tears she no longer bothered hiding. Later, as the party wound down, Ethan walked over to Daniel and wrapped both arms around him in a hug too big for his small frame. "This is the best birthday I've ever had," he whispered. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He crouched down to Ethan's eye level. "I'm really glad, buddy. You deserve it." Sarah approached quietly once the room had mostly cleared, her eyes red, her voice unsteady. "You didn't just buy my son a cake," she said. "You reminded me that good people still exist. I'd almost forgotten that." Daniel didn't know what to say, so he just nodded, blinking hard against his own tears. A few weeks later, a small envelope arrived at Daniel's apartment. Inside was a hand-drawn card from Ethan, crayon balloons, a lopsided cake, and stick figures standing together in front of it. Across the top, in careful, uneven handwriting, it read, "Thank you for making my birthday unforgettable." Daniel pinned it to his fridge, right next to a photo of his late wife, and stood there for a long moment, feeling something settle quietly into place. Sometimes changing someone's life doesn't require a fortune. It only requires noticing someone's pain, and choosing, even when you have very little yourself, to care anyway. One small act, multiplied by strangers willing to give a little more, can turn an ordinary Saturday into a memory that lasts a lifetime. If this story moved you, make sure to like this video, leave a comment sharing your own moment of kindness, and subscribe for more stories like this one every week, because the world could always use a few more Daniels.